Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. And yesterday, since I did the Republicans' best case scenario in the Senate for the 2026 midterms, it is time for the Democratic version, because I like to keep things fair. So let's get into it. So this is going to be the Democrats' best case scenario. In this scenario, Donald Trump, he kind of crashes the economy. His promises don't get through with the public gets more outraged with the Epstein files. Trump continues to face mass protests across the nation, and it does not go well for the first 2 years of his second presidency. So this is going to be the Democrats' best case scenario there. I'm not going to get too into it. I'm just going to get into the specific races. Let's start off with the safe Democratic seats. These are all states that are going to be won by 15 percentage points or more. The last time most of these seats were up were in 2020. So, in 2020, there were three special races that won't be up, except for there was a Georgia special election, but Ossoff is still up again this year. But Warnock and Kelly, those were special elections in Georgia and Arizona. Those will not be up. So, just for your information, but instead of those two, you're going to have special elections in Ohio and Florida. Florida, you have Ashley Moody to replace former Senator Marco Rubio, who's now the Secretary of State under the second Trump administration. And in Ohio, you have John Husted, who's appointed to replace Vice President J.D. Vance in the Senate there. So, all the safe seats for the Democrats are going to be races that are going to be won by over 15 points. In this scenario, all of the races except for New Jersey will be safe Democrat. All the safe seats from 2020 except for New Jersey will be safe Democrat in this scenario. You have Ohio with Jeff Merkley. You have Illinois. Illinois is interesting because Dick Durbin, the incumbent senator, one of the oldest Democrats in the Senate, will be retiring. The Democratic primary in 2026 is going to get interesting, to say the least. I think the favored candidate is, Roger Krishnamurthy, representative from Illinois' 8th congressional district. So, that will be safe Democrat in Massachusetts. Also, New Hampshire is not going to go safe. New Hampshire and New Jersey, safe Democratic seats from 2020 will not be safe in this best case scenario. But Massachusetts, Rhode Island with Jack Reed, and Delaware with Chris Coons are going to be safe Democrat, as well as Colorado. Colorado was a flip for John Hickenlooper, taking down Cory Gardner in 2020. Hickenlooper is going to be running for re-election. I think he will win by safe in a best case scenario for Democrats. Colorado is shifting to the left as well. So, yeah, there's that. That is going to be it for the safe Democratic seats. Let's do the safe Republican ones now. These ones are kind of no question. Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, you have Ben Sass. If Dan Osborne, because if Dan Osborne, that's not going to be safe Republican because Dan Osborne is running. He was the independent who only lost by 6.7 percentage points in 2024. He's running again because Ben Sass, he was he retired, I think. Is that it? Because there was the special election in 2024 had Pete Ricketts. He's the one up in 2026. He took over Sass's seat. He won by 25 points against the more liberal Preston Love. Did much worse than Dan Osborne, but it is going to be likely Osborne versus Pete Ricketts in 2026. That is going to kind of ensure Nebraska not going safe Democrat. Democrats have already said that they will not be putting out a candidate and will be endorsing Dan Osborne. So Dan Osborne will be part of the Democratic coalition in this scenario. If we go back to 2020 in Kansas, Jim Marshall, he only won by 11 points. He's not going to get it by safe in the best case scenario for Democrats. But Oklahoma is going to be safe Republican. You have Jim Inhofe, um, he from Oklahoma, he won in 2020, but Oklahoma did have a special election because Inhofe died in office back in what 2021, 2022. So wait, no, he died in 2024. I think. Wait, yeah, maybe he just retired. I don't know. Sorry, I forgot. But this is gonna be Markwayne Mullins' seat race here. Oklahoma, it's easily gonna go safe Republican. Um, if we go to Louisiana, you have Bill Cassidy. He is Louisiana uses an interesting kind of um, system. All the candidates for both parties and independents all in one ballot. No primaries. Um, if a candidate does not reach 50%, then the top two go into a runoff. Bill Cassidy reached 50% in 2020. In a best case scenario, I feel like that will not be the case. Louisiana would Cassidy would get less than 50 percentage points, and then him and a Democrat would go into a runoff. But still, Cassidy would win by a safe Republican margin in that scenario in a runoff. In Mississippi, Mississippi was likely Republican because Cindy Hyde Smith is just such a horrible candidate. She lost to very unknown Clinton-age Democrat in Mississippi. Sure, it is the South, but Cindy Hyde Smith is not a good candidate. That's not going to go safe Republican in a Democrat's best case scenario, to say the least. In Alabama, Tommy Tuberville flipped this seat from Doug Jones in 2020 because Jones had won a 2017 special election because he had uh, won it against a very, very uh, bad Republican with a lot of baggage, but he lost in a landslide to kind of average MAGA Tommy Tuberville. Tuberville is going to be retiring and running for governor. Alabama is up for grabs technically, but I mean it's Alabama. The Republicans, they're probably going to have a pretty contested primary. It's going to be Steve Marshall, most likely the Attorney General of Alabama. The Democrats, they have a couple candidates. In a best case scenario, I feel like they could narrow it down by 5 points and make it likely Republican. So we're gonna do that later. But in Arkansas, Tom Cotton is gonna win by safe Republican and reelected to the Senate. In Tennessee, Bill Hagerty, who won by 27 points in 2020, he will be running for re-election and he will win by a safe margin. These kind of states, there's just no way that they would go into likely. Kentucky, you have Mitch McConnell retiring. Very unpopular, but very interesting Republican primary. The bad thing for Democrats is that the only kind of good candidate they had was Andy Beshear, the Democratic governor of Kentucky, who was term limited in 2027. He is retiring. Sorry, no, he's retiring from Kentucky state politics at least and not running for the Senate seat, so they're kind of doomed. Kentucky, one of the reddest states in the country, is going to say safe Republican. And West Virginia. So the only good way here is if Democrats had Jim Manchin again. He hasn't declined to run, but Jim Manchin, very unlikely. But Shelley Moore Capito, the incumbent Republican here, is still a pretty unpopular, sort of rhino senator. But Joe Manchin, he is likely going to not run because that would be the Democrats' only path. Plus, Manchin is an independent now, so I think there's no way that Manchin would go back to being a Democrat and running against Shelley Moore Capito in West Virginia. He would probably lose anyways, but West Virginia will stay safe Republican, even in a Democrat's best case scenario. Now let's go to the likely states. These are states that will be decided by 5 to 15 percentage points. I already talked about Mississippi. I already talked about Alabama. Those two are going to go in likely Republican. For, let's see here, Montana. Montana, you have Steve Daines running for re-election. He unseated. Sorry, no. He was running for re-election in 2020, but Steve Bullock, the former Democratic governor of Montana, ran against him. He lost by 10 points. Bullock was a much better candidate than Daines' 2014 opponent, Amanda Curtis. In 2026, the Democratic senator who lost his seat in 2024, Jon Tester, he's already announced that he will not be running for Daines' seat in 2026. So this is not good. Democrats, their only path to get it even sort of close is if Steve Bullock runs again, and that would get it to likely Republican. Maybe 6 or 7 points, but if he doesn't, it's still going to be likely Republican in a Democrat's best case scenario. Just maybe Daines plus 12 points, 11 points. But that is Montana for you. I don't think Montana will ever have a Democratic senator or governor for at least 10 years. So let's talk about Kansas now. Kansas, you got Jim Marshall, who beat out Barbara Bollier. I don't think she was doing anything right. Yeah. She was just a state representative. In 2026, Roger Marshall, sorry, not Jim Marshall, I don't know why I said that, but Roger Marshall, he is going to be running for re-election. Nothing really to be discussed here. Even though he hasn't declared his run, he is still going to be running. Democrats, their only path was if Laura Kelly, the Democratic governor, who is term limited in 2026, ran. She has declined. I don't know, because so many of these Democratic governors are not running. Andy Beshear, Laura Kelly, Gretchen Whitmer. It's interesting, but Laura Kelly, since she's not running, Roger Marshall should still win by likely Republican because Democrats have no good candidates. What else do we got? Let's move over to New Mexico here. Ben Ray Lujan, he is running for re-election. 2020 was his first race. Lujan, he is running. Republicans, they don't have any good candidates. I think Nella, she was a candidate here in 2024 who went against, who was it? Yeah, Martin Heinrich. Ben Ray Lujan, if he's going up against Dominici, Heinrich won against her by 10 points in 2024 in somewhat of a red wave that was done by Trump. I think Lujan could get it to likely Democrat as well. New Mexico, I do think it's slightly shifting to the right, but I feel like Lujan could win by 13 to 14 points here. Now, Minnesota, you have, this is going to be an open seat. Tina Smith, the incumbent Democrat, is going to be retiring. She only won by 5 points in 2020, but as I said, the Legal Marijuana Now party kind of just narrowed her margin because these are left-wing people. 6 points would have went to her in an overwhelming majority, so she should have won by 10 points, 11 points. But obviously, it is going to be an open seat since Smith is retiring. You have A.G. Craig versus Penny Flanagan. Flanagan is polling ahead of her in the only poll. But if we go to the general election, sadly, there is no polling. But the Republicans, they're going to nominate Royce White, literally like the worst candidate ever. I could see Minnesota going safe Democrat because Klobuchar is somewhat of a juggernaut in Minnesota. She won by 16 points, but she still overperformed Trump. She still overperformed Harris by 10 points. I think that wasn't even because of Harris. I think that was because of mostly Royce White. So I could see Minnesota going safe Democrat again. I forgot to put it there, but that's Minnesota because Royce White is just such a bad candidate. Now let's go to New Jersey. New Jersey, you have Cory Booker running for re-election. He is a senior senator from New Jersey because Andy Kim just got elected. 2026, he's running for re-election. Republicans, they have, I guess, nobody yet. It's going to be a pretty clear path for Cory Booker. He's kind of popular in New Jersey, but it is shifting to the right. I feel like even in a Democrat's best case scenario, it is going to be likely Democrat, and that's where I'm going to put it. Um, in Virginia now, you have Mark Warner. He won by 12 points against Daniel Gade in 2020. He is running for re-election. Republicans, their best bet would only be Glenn Youngkin, and he hasn't said anything about it. And Warner would still beat Youngkin out. I feel like Warner will win re-election by a likely Democratic margin in this Democrats' best case scenario. That's Virginia. And, sorry, let's go to New Hampshire now. New Hampshire, this is, yeah, there's only a couple Democratic seats that we're going to talk about left. Jeanne Shaheen, she is retiring. She won by 16 points against Brian Messner. In 2026, the Democratic nominee is almost certainly going to be Chris Pappas, the representative from the slightly bluer than the second, but New Hampshire's first congressional district. His fellow representative Maggie Goodlander endorsed him, and as well as both incumbent Democratic senators from the state, Jeanne Shaheen and Maggie Hassan. The Republican, you have either Dan Innes or Scott Brown. Scott Brown was a senator from Massachusetts. He retired in 2013. He ran for New Hampshire Senate in 2014 and was the ambassador to New Zealand and Samoa, so he's been kind of shifting around. But Scott Brown, he somehow won in a much bluer Massachusetts, but was not able to win in, yeah, because he lost his New Hampshire, his Massachusetts seat to Elizabeth Warren in 2012, while winning in 2006. Sorry, what? Wait, wait. 2012. Oh yeah, no, because he was appointed right by Mitt Romney. Um, so he was never able to win in Massachusetts, but he did fairly well against Elizabeth Warren, in a D plus 35 Massachusetts, but he did lose to Shaheen by 3.2 points in 2014. On the presidential level in 2012, you had Obama winning by 5.6, so it wasn't that much of an overperformance against Romney, but I don't think he's going to do that well, and in a best case scenario, Chris Pappas will win by a likely Democratic margin. Okay, um, now let's go to Florida and South Carolina. South Carolina, you have Lindsey Graham running for re-election. Extremely unpopular warmonger. He went against Jamie Harrison, the DNC chair, former DNC chair. He was the chair back then in 2020. He ran, and he put so much resources into this seat, and he still won by 10 points in not even that red of South Carolina. Lindsey Graham, he is running again in 2026. Ralph Norman, representative here, he is going to be running for governor. He was not going to running, but him or Nancy Mace could be the candidate for governor. But Lindsey Graham, he has a pretty wide open path to get renominated. For the Democrats, though, they have no good candidates. South Carolina will remain likely Republican. In Florida, you have Ashley Moody, the former Florida Attorney General, who was appointed by Ron DeSantis, because Marco Rubio was appointed as Secretary of State and there was a vacant seat. Ashley Moody, she actually overperforms Ron DeSantis in Florida when he runs for governor, because Moody, she's actually the real juggernaut of Florida. She actually does better than an already very good overperforming Ron DeSantis. Florida will be likely Republican in this best case scenario for Democrats. Now, let's talk about the swing states in a normal scenario. Georgia, North Carolina, Maine, and Michigan. We'll start off with Michigan. Michigan is going to go likely Democrat in this scenario. It went by just 1.7 percentage points to incumbent Democrat Gary Peters in 2020 to a pretty good Republican candidate, John James. John James is running for the governor's seat in 2026, and Gary Peters is retiring. The Democrats, they're either going to nominate Abdul Al-Sayed, Mallory McMurrough, or Haley Stevens. Haley Stevens is extremely establishment. Abdul Al-Sayed is extremely progressive. Mallory McMurrough is sort of the more kind of in between candidate. She's also gotten the most endorsement from state legislatures. So honestly, the best case here is if Mallory McMorrow is going to be the nominee. She doesn't really anger many Al Sayed supporters, and she's not that progressive. Um, I feel like she could win here against Mike Rogers, who's likely going to become the Republican nominee. Former Representative Mike Rogers, he lost by under a point to Alyssa Slotkin in this 2024 Senate race. Um, yeah, but I think in a best case scenario, Mallory McMorrow wins by 7 percentage points against Mike Rogers. Let's go to Georgia now. This is going to be the last Democratic seat that's already been held by a Democrat. Um, Jon Ossoff, he won by 1.2 points in the special election in 2020. Jon Ossoff, but then in 2026, Ossoff is running for re-election. He was able to not unseat, but he beat David Perdue here, because, David Perdue, he was the incumbent senator, and there was a special election. But sorry, not a special election, but there was a runoff. God, but Georgia. Yeah, this wasn't a special shoot, dude. It was a flip. Sorry, I confused that up. But Jon Ossoff, he's gonna be the Democratic nominee, no doubt about it. But Republicans, there's some issues here because Republican Governor Brian Kemp, who is term limited in 2026 and will not be running, he endorsed Derek Dooley, a former football coach, over Buddy Carter or Mike Collins. He also kind of forced John King, the Georgia Insurance Commissioner, to drop out and run for commissioner again. I think Mike Collins, yeah, he's winning this polling. I think he's going to be the best candidate, but Jon Ossoff, he would beat him without even having to go to a runoff. In Democrats' best case scenario, he would win by exactly 5 points. So that is going to be it for Georgia. Now let's go to Maine. This is held by incumbent Republican Susan Collins. She won by 8.6 points in 2020 in a state where Biden won by 9 points. She overperformed Trump by 17 points in 2020, and in 2014, she won this seat by 37 points. In 2008, she overperformed John McCain here. She won by 22 points. She overperformed John McCain in 2008 by around 40 points. She is a juggernaut in Maine, but Democrats are very confident that they can take her down here because they have a better lineup they've ever seen in the Democratic primary. And also, Susan Collins has not yet announced her bid, but she likely will. You have Graham Plattner, an extremely progressive oyster farmer from coastal Maine. You have possibly a couple other candidates that are into state politics: Kathy Breen, Ryan Fecteau, and Jeanette Mills, the governor of Maine, who is term limited. If Jeanette Mills does run, I think she would win the primary, but progressives are really looking on Graham Plattner. I think it's going to be a pretty easy win if it's going to be Jeanette Mills. Graham Plattner, it's going to be a bit harder to win in Maine's 2nd Congressional District because moderates only do well there. But I think Jeanette Mills will become the nominee in the best case scenario for Democrats, and Democrats win this seat by around 4 points. That is, we're moving into the lean states now. These are states that will be decided by margins of 1 to 5 percentage points. Now we have 6 seats left. These are all held by Republicans. Let's get into it. Starting off in North Carolina, where Thom Tillis, the incumbent Republican, is retiring after facing a threat from Donald Trump of a primary challenge. The Republican nominee is likely going to be Michael Whatley, the former chair of the RNC. He's a very good campaigner, but the Democrats, they have Roy Cooper. He's going to be the nominee. The governor of North Carolina, former governor of North Carolina, he was term limited in 2024. He won by big margins in 2020. If you see here, he won by 5 points in a state where Trump won, and in 2016 he flipped this from Pat McCrory. He won by 0.22 percentage points. So he's one of the best candidates that Democrats could pick up. And also, this made Wiley Nickel, the former representative from North Carolina's 13th. He only served one term. He dropped out and endorsed Cooper because he knew he had no chance. In a best case scenario, Whatley would lose, even though putting up a very good fight. Cooper would win by 4 points. Now, Republicans, they need 4 seats to remain in control in the Senate, because obviously Vance is a tiebreaker. But Democrats, they need 2. They need to get to 51. So let's see. Let's start off with Nebraska. In 2024, Pete Ricketts won this special election by 25 points against Preston Love, but Dan Osborne is going to be the candidate against him now. Pete Ricketts, he's the son of a billionaire, which Osborne could really cite that out. Osborne only lost by 7 points compared to Love losing by 25. So, if it is a Democrats' best case scenario, Osborne really does good. This blue, just pretend it's Osborne, guys, but Nebraska is going to go to Osborne by 3 points. Now Democrats are just 1 seat away from flipping the Senate. Okay, let's go to Texas now. Texas in 2020, John Cornyn won the seat by around 10 points against M.J. Hager. In 2026, he's running for re-election, but he has a very tough Republican primary. Cornyn underperformed Donald Trump in Texas, and now he's facing a much more MAGA challenger, Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton basically beats him in every single poll by at least a couple of points, sometimes by double digits. John Cornyn was actually endorsed by a lot of incumbent, even a lot of MAGA senators like Tommy Tuberville and Tim Scott. But that is not stopping MAGA from voting for Paxton. Paxton carries a lot of baggage with him, and that is not going to be good. Fellow Senator Ted Cruz did not decline anybody, and Wesley Hunt, he is the representative from Texas, is 38th. He could jump into the race. He's very MAGA, but does not carry the baggage that Ken Paxton does hold. Democrats, they have an interesting little setup here. They have Colin Allred, the candidate in the 2024 race, who went against Ted Cruz. He lost by 8.5 points, but overperformed Harris here by around 5 percentage points. He could win, but Democrats, they also have James Talarico, an up-and-coming Democratic state representative. Beto O'Rourke, somebody who has done a lot. He ran against Abbott. He ran against Cruz before. Ran in the Democratic primaries for president in 2020. I think they have to kind of spread this out. I think James Talarico could run for governor, or just stay in the state Senate, maybe. The state house. Beto, he could run for governor again, or Joaquin Castro could primary either O'Rourke or Allred. We'll see, but I think Allred is going to be the candidate here. He is going to lose, I just think, by around 2 points to John Cornyn. I feel like Cornyn carries a bit less baggage, because, God forsaken, his wife, Ken Paxton's wife, has literally filed divorce claims against Paxton. Not claims, but filed divorce against Paxton. Paxton has a mistress. I don't know how he's still winning in these polls, but it has gotten closer significantly since that came out. He's only been winning by 3, by 5, and one poll has Cornyn up by 1. This is different from when in June and May, where Cornyn was up, where Cornyn was down by double digits. So that's very interesting. I think Cornyn would keep this seat by 2 points in the best case scenario for Democrats. Now let's go, to Ohio now, where we have Sherrod Brown likely going to become the Democratic nominee here. He lost his incumbency to Bernie Moreno in 2024. Moreno flipped the seat by like 4 points, and now Brown is seeking revenge. 2026 Ohio Senate race. you have, sorry, what is this? 2026 Ohio Senate. Sir, what? Yeah, I don't see that. Okay. 2020 Ohio Senate election. Um, okay, wait. Can I not find this? 2026 special Ohio Senate. What? Okay, yeah. There we go. Um, Democrats are going to face John Husted. He was a former lieutenant governor. He was appointed by Mike DeWine. But now Democrats, they have Sherrod Brown running for the Senate. He's likely going to be the Democratic nominee. Sherrod Brown, he's going to put up a fight against John Husted, but it would have been better in a blue wave to go against Bernie Maria, as he's a bit more MAGA. Husted is a bit more quiet and chillaxed, I guess. I think in the best case scenario, Husted would win by around 1.5 percentage points, and now that leaves 2 seats, Ohio and Alaska. If Democrats just win one of them, they win the majority. Let's go to Alaska now, where we have Dan Sullivan, obviously the more MAGA Republican, compared to Lisa Murkowski, going up against possibly, his biggest challenge. That is going to be Mary Peltola. There's no primary here as well. It's an open primary. The top, if no candidate reaches 50%, the top 2 candidates move on, I think. Mary Peltola, since somebody else, Tom Begich, is running for the governor seat. Mary Peltola, the former representative here, in Democratic representative, in a very red seat. She is probably going to run for either Senate and House. I don't know why she wouldn't run for Senate. I think in a best case scenario, she would win by less than a percentage point against Dan Sullivan, and that would give Democrats control of the Senate. So there is that. I think she would win by around 0.4 percentage points. Now we move on to our final seat, Iowa. Iowa, you have Joni Ernst, the incumbent Republican, retiring, and now it's either going to be Ashley Hinson. She is the first major candidate to announce her bid here. She's a representative from the 2nd District. Now you have Brenna Bird and Matthew Whitaker possibly running. Brenna Bird, obviously the Attorney General of Iowa, and Matthew Whitaker, he's the ambassador to NATO under the Trump administration. We'll see how that works out. Hinson would still be the favorite, definitely. Democrats, they have a lot of candidates. They have Zach Walz, a state senator from the 43rd Senate District, Tarek from the 20th State House District, Nathan Sage, he's big on social media. He's very progressive. Progressives are going to be behind him. And yet the more establishment and experienced moderate vote is split by Kraus, Norris, Tarek, and Walz. You could see something going here for Sage. But J.D. Schulten, the state representative from the 1st District, dropped out and endorsed his friend Josh Tarek in the State House. We'll see how that goes, but I feel like Hinson is a pretty strong candidate, stronger than Ernst, and I will have it going till Republican Hinson wins by 0.7 percentage points. So this is a Democrat's best case scenario. If you haven't watched my Republican one yet, please consider watching. Thank you for watching once again. Please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. And thank you, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.